We are our own worst critic, right? I didn't realize how limiting I was being for myself until I would say the last 6 months, even, right? Even after 18 months in Gobundance. And I finally hit a point where it's just like, why am I stop? Why are you only thinking here? You got all these guys around you that can help you get here. Think bigger, be vulnerable, put yourself out there.
Future millionaire women and future multimillionaire men, listen up. I have something to tell you, and I had ChatGPT write it for me. I haven't read it yet, so I'm going to read it right now, and let's see how it does. Are you ready to join a tribe that will elevate your life and business to the next level? Gobundance is the community for active entrepreneurial men who desire to live epic lives. And now, with Gobundance Emerge, men who are not yet multimillionaires and women who are not yet millionaires can experience the power of Gobundance too. That's pretty good. With the 6 life-changing pillars, you'll experience peak physical condition, a supportive tribe, bucket list achievements, peer partnerships, giving back, and building a lifetime of wealth. Plus, with Gobundance Emerge, you'll gain access to mentorship, training, accountability, and community that will help you accelerate your results and achieve your goals. Apply now to join the tribe and experience epic adventures around the world. Connect with like-minded individuals and elevate your life and business to the next level. Go to Gobundance.com, fill out an application, or if you're ready for $5,000 a year or $500 a month, your call. Go to GobundanceEmerge.com and simply join us. If you're a millionaire, male, $1 to $2 million in net worth, you're going to get certain aspects of Gobundance Elite that you'll be able to tie into by being an Emerge member. And on the ladies' side, we've got tie-ins with our Entrepreneur micro tribe to the Gobundance women's side of things, and they invite our Gobundance Emerge female members to their events consistently. GobundanceEmerge.com. If you're not yet at that $2 million mark for a man, or not yet at that $1 million mark for a woman, where you could join Gobundance Women or Gobundance Elite, GobundanceEmerge.com, or simply go to Gobundance.com, fill out an application, and I might be calling you. Back to the show. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is a member profile for Gobundance, and my guest today, Josh Hatter, is a GoBro 2.5 years out of South Carolina, right? South Carolina. Yeah. I'm pretty sure you're down there, right? South Carolina, yep. Absolutely. He's an entrepreneur and investor, and you got to check out what he's doing over at joshhatter.com. Josh, welcome, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a little while now.
Same. I've heard, it's funny when you mentioned John Holt, guy in my pod, and you're right near him. I'm like, you know what? He's mentioned you before. It's you and Dewey. He always talks about you and Dewey Golub. Those are the two guys he talks about.
He's known Dewey forever, like high school days. Yeah. So
become a recruiter down there. So, but let's dive into your backstory from South Carolina. Kind of give us the beginnings up through where you are today.
Yeah, sure. It's a kind of an interesting story, I guess. So I've actually been in Charleston since 1999. So there's a ton of transplants here now, especially in the last 10 years. Boeing opened up basically their East Coast manufacturing facility here. So there's 12,000 Boeing employees in Charleston now. And so been here for a long time, kind of seen a massive transformation as a result of that. Yeah. But I actually grew up in Northern Virginia in the DC area, outside of about 20 minutes outside of the district. Super shitty background, I tend to say. So, grew up, just all kinds of abuse. My father grew up in a similar environment and definitely kind of passed that down with the environment that we grew up in. So, just constant domestic violence, the number of times, record for the number of times that the cops were called for domestic violence, and one day was 3. Wow. By the third time, it was the same 2 officers every time, by the way. So by the third time, one of the guys was like, "Look, you guys can't keep calling us out here. If we come out again, one of you is going to jail, whether you want to press charges or not. You can go for the night." So one of those types of situations, physical, mental, sexual abuse. So my siblings and I've got 2 sisters and a brother. We were really just trying to get out, right? Like you spend your whole life surviving, and it just kind of becomes this like facade to the rest of the world. And then, on the inside, you're just trying to live, or like just make it to the next day. So, fortunate enough to get out of there, went to college. That's what brought me to Charleston actually in 99. And so, came to school here and just been kind of trying to find my way in life ever since. I tripped into, as far as backstory, 20 years in corporate America in sales. I hated every minute of it.
Yeah.
I call it soul sucking corporate America. I spent a dozen of those 20 years in Fortune 500 companies, five and a half of them at a Fortune 100 company. I like process, but not process for process sake. And when you do those, you go, the biggest contract I ever won was like $4 billion, right? And so, you once you get to certain levels, you're going like all the way up the chain, and you got guys that like they have to add value at these meetings, and it drove me nuts. So, not a whole lot of fun there. I finally exited it because I had tripped into short term rentals. The first Fortune 500 I worked for, actually 700 people got laid off when they were splitting into two separate public companies. That was back in 2012. So I listed the condo I was living in, went and crashed with some friends just to test out VRBO back then. And it was in kind of like the legal area in Charleston, but it was against the HOA. And there was a guy, old guy that was retired there that, he was kind of a busybody anyway. So as soon as he saw that, like, he's talking to a guest, like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" So he reported it, got shut down within 3 months. But that was my first exposure to short-term rentals. So kind of a short-term rental OG, if you will. But kind of did some other things entrepreneurially on the side as I was limping through corporate America. Um, Traveled a ton, still had the corporate job during COVID. 2019, I think I flew like 94 times. At one point, it was like 13 weeks in a row. About like week 10 or so, this was like kind of my pivot moment. I had already been doing the short term rental thing, started back on Airbnb in 2016, and it started growing both as an investor, and I have a property management company. And so I'm just trying to do all the things right. So this ninth or 10th week in a row, when I was on travel, I woke up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And it was, turns out it was a panic attack, but I'm sitting here when I first woke up, I'm like, what city am I in? And then crap, am I dying? And then should I call 911? Right. And so, realizing that it was a panic attack, that was kind of a big wake up call to me. I think that pace and that career was literally killing me. It was really starting to have a physical impact on my body. So it had kind of gotten to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. So quit my corporate career in December of 2021.
When was the
So
panic attack? Out of curiosity,
what was it?
December 2021 is when you quit.
No,
Do you remember?
December 20. Yeah,
Yep.
and the
When?
panic attack was about April of 19.
Oh
So
wow!
yeah, I
So you
still
lasted
lived
2 more
through
years. Wow.
went
Yeah.
through COVID. Yeah. Well, and so, I was grateful to have a corporate job during COVID because that was the worst hospitality recession in the history of mankind.
True.
And I kind of suffered through that, just making things work. But frankly, I look at that as a blessing now for many reasons. But number one, it really proved like, okay, if having no revenue for 3 months while the world is shut down doesn't kill what I've built here, it's bent it, but it hasn't broken it. Really kind of gave me the confidence to finally, work my way out. So I think I had 21 listings that we were managing. When I quit corporate America, we've got 58 now, and another half a dozen in the pipeline getting ready to come on. So we've kind of exploded the management piece. A third of what I manage, my management company manages, I own either all or a piece of. And so we've gotten into the kind of boutique hotel / boutique bed and breakfast, the actual B&B, not Airbnb space, and where we're literally serving breakfast, grab and go breakfast to guests. Kind of gotten into that over the last 18 months.
And
So really kind of exploded on all fronts between the investor front and the management front.
yeah. And these
Because
are all.
surprise,
Oh, go
things
ahead. I'm
grow
sorry.
faster. Surprise, things grow faster when they have your full attention. So
That's so true, man. So true. Oh man, that's hit me because I'm right now in this space of like I got to consolidate and figure out where I need to spend direct my time and focus. Are these all Charleston based or around Charleston that you're managing and own?
yeah, we do. So we're in 8 cities in 2 states. So we are in the Smokies,
Wow.
and Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Sevierville, and then we're in 5 cities in and around Charleston. So kind of all the major suburbs in and around Charleston as
How
well.
has it been recently as we record in mid 2023? downturn, but Charleston's still a hopping city. I mean, have you seen? Has it been harder? Has it been? Have you seen a dip in your in what you're able to get?
No, no. So I mean, definitely in the Smokies, right? And there was a supply demand imbalance, I think, still in COVID, and it was such a hot place to be. As an investor, because people flocked there, they could go and visit for a couple of weeks while the world was shut down and at least enjoy nature.
Yeah,
Charleston definitely has been the opposite of that. And so it's interesting. So, you get to a certain size, once you have more than $1 million a year with Airbnb, they'll give you your own account manager. So we meet with her monthly. And the last time we met, which was about 2 weeks ago, she's like, showing us the graphs for year to date. She's like, so, in the year over year comparisons, right? And she's like, so how are you doing this? When I talk to your other competitors, they're all down right now for the year over year. And you're still up. Like, what exactly are you doing differently? And I laughed and I said, well, why the hell would I tell you that? So, kind of my response, and I mean this, I kind of corrected a little bit with her, but I'm like, look, you can't just see the data. You have to read it, interpret it, and formulate a strategy around it, right? And so, I've been using dynamic pricing for many years, right? You're kind of, if you don't, then you're way behind the eight ball. But we've changed the strategy significantly every year since 2020, right? Obviously, COVID was one thing. After that, coming out of it, turns out when you lock people up, they want to travel and they'll pay anything. So 21 and 22 were just like gimmies, right? So you had all these people tripping into the asset class and they just thought they were rock stars and charging whatever they want. And now, because of the supply demand imbalance, if anything, it's too much supply with waning demand,
right.
in light of macroeconomic issues, right? And so you got to run it like a business. A lot of the things that people got away with 2, 3 years ago, you just can't get away with it anymore. So our business is still strong. My plan this year is kind of keep rates the same year over year to up about 5% and then grow occupancy. And so we've got our own strategies on how we do that. But yeah, so far so good. Feel pretty good about where we're at this point in the year. Just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, if you will, as we're kind of seeing on the investor side. There's definitely an imbalance there too.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And one of the things you talked about with leaving the job, I just saw a quote. Like as I told you I was late in traffic. I had my wife drive so I could do a couple things, and I saw this quote from Jim Rohn. It was something to the effect of, "Work harder on yourself than you do your job. If you work hard at your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune." Right? That's
Totally.
I feel like your story embodies that. But I do
Yeah.
feel compelled with what you've gone through to ask this: are you married? Do you have kids? What's the family situation?
I kind of spent 20 years in and out of therapy. I mentioned I have three siblings. They kind of took the alternate path where, my mother went back to school at 50 to become a social worker, is now retired. My brother's a paramedic. I say that I deal with stupid people. His job exists because of stupid people. So that's his kind of like way to give back. And my sister works for the school system in outside of Atlanta. My other sister has a master's in social work. So they kind of went the like let's help other people route. I joined corporate America and did 20 years in and out of therapy. So I finally settled down. I married my wife last October. So we've made it about 6 months now, and it's super interesting. I'm a huge fan of talk therapy. I think everybody should do it. To your
Right.
point, you gotta grow as a person, right? And now we're doing it together. Just the normal kind of marriage counseling to start off a marriage. I know that I didn't have a good role model. I was incredibly fortunate. Talk about the five things that are really forks in the road where you can kind of make decisions. Incredibly fortunate in that I met a guy, my very first job in corporate America when I was 20. And he put out an email to the entire office, probably 100 employees at the time, just asking for help on a proposal. And I was the only 20. I guess I was 21 at the time. Started at 20, and the email came out when I was 21. So literally the only person out of 100 that responded. And that was back 2003. So long before Zoom and And really even just the proliferation of email and just using things all day every day. So you actually still met in a conference room, and so I literally came in Saturday and Sunday every weekend for 18 months, and I came in 1 to 2 times during the week on average as well. At the end of that, I just saw opportunity. I'm like, okay, I like what he's doing. This like competitive analysis, putting together a proposal for the government that wound up being, I think it was a $179 million contract. It was the largest at the time that office had ever won. But I got exposure to this guy. And so, brilliant professionally, probably the highest EQ of anybody that I've ever met in my life, just incredibly good at people, reading people and understanding motivations, and those types of things, trying to, building teams. And I just didn't know anything about any of that soft skill stuff, right? And so, got to know that guy. That I volunteered for that. I wasn't like a direct employee. The company itself gave me a $500 bonus before taxes, so it was like $300, and they gave me 1 day off after that. So I really got nothing for it from the
Yeah.
company, but I got a good introduction to this guy, and so just amazing freaking guy. He's been married now more than 20 years to his wife. His first wife died of cancer, so
Oof.
been married now for more than 20 years. I call them mom and dad. At some point, I did work for him directly in there for about half a dozen years, but he just things kind of progressed over time, and then at some point, we just kind of stopped talking about work after I didn't work directly for him anymore. And just talk about life. And he actually was the best man at my wedding. So
Wow.
kind of took a weird path, if you will, to get to where I am at this point, even just mentally. But just super fortunate to meet some people very early in my adult life that really genuinely cared. And I mean, like, I don't know where I'd probably be dead without this guy, to be honest with you. I just am incredibly fortunate to have met some of the people that I've met along the way, just given the context of how shitty my background was before these people.
Are kids in the equation for you potentially? And the follow up question to that, I would wonder is, I don't know the answer to this, obviously, but do you have any fear becoming a father, or even a husband, that demons from the past, conditioning from the past, or whatever, rear their head?
Yeah, I mean that's really the reason. So first of all, my wife and I are trying now.
Yeah.
Um, she's an OB anesthesiologist, so she sees those really freak cases that happen.
Yeah.
But I just at this age, I'd love to have a kid. I think I would actually be a good dad now, where that definitely would not have been the case 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. And the reason that we started going to counseling so early is I know my weaknesses at this point. Like, I have a lot of clarity, not just what I want out of life, but also where I am. And, I know that I don't have the tools to deal with this stuff. I don't have any fear that I'm going to get to this point where, I'm punching holes in walls and throwing my wife around. That's just, it disgusts me. It's, even if I see any version of it, and I think when you go through that, you can see it in people a lot easier too. You can kind of see the signs of it. And it just still kind of makes me sick to my stomach seeing it. So I don't have any fear of passing that on. In fact, as far as like GoBundance goes, I mean, it's interesting how many guys have some type of similarities in their background. I'm actually more worried about the other end of the spectrum, right? And so I've been able to have enough success that I'm actually worried about, if we're fortunate enough to have a kid, I don't want them to suffer like I did. I certainly don't want someone to have to survive just to get out of that environment. But how do you make sure that they have enough that they can, do what they want in life, and not have to do something because they feel like they have to, but they have to do something, and there's some
Yeah.
kind of balance in there. And I think I worry far more about that these days as we're trying to have our first kid, than I do reliving my
It's a
past.
great point, man. There's a great discussion going on right now in the group around homeschooling, and I think a big chunk of that is
Yeah,
that, right? Like, how do you instill
yeah,
grit? How do you
yeah.
again, we're fortunate. Most of, I mean, if you're not in go, like most of us are fortunate that our kids don't have the worries or I mean, for everything from whether you got spanked all the way up through what you have going on, or just the indifference towards kids that I think guys of our age or people of our age probably grew up with. It was just a different generation. Kids were to be seen, not heard. I remember hearing that all the time, right? There was just a different view on what kids were. Unfortunately, all the way through kind of what you, or not kind of, but exactly what you grew up with. But yeah, ensuring that you instill grit is a big thing. That's why I'm a big fan of alternative education. I talk a lot about Acton Academy for my kids, and I see my older kid who's been out of Acton for a year now since we've been down in the DR, but he still creates challenges for himself in a good way. Like he challenges himself to do certain things because he has that sort of instilled by being in that environment. So it's like anything, I guess, right? You put him in the right
It's so
environment.
important.
Yeah.
Not to head down a rabbit hole on that, but let's be honest, the U.S. education system is completely backwards,
Oh, it's
right?
fucked.
You're
It's
not.
fucked. It's
It's
awful.
so
Yeah.
bad. You don't. There's no like, hey, you got an F, but you tried.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's life. Like you fail at shit. I mean,
Yeah,
as
but
an
I've said
entrepreneur, I
this, man. Like,
fail every day.
right. And that's the thing. When you look at the two tracks, not to get, like you said, way down, but you've got sort of formal education, corporate, and then you've got sort of, homeschooled into or homeschooled or non traditional education into entrepreneurship. Failure is treated very differently in those two tracks, right? You are a
Yes,
failure when you get an F. Like you are bad. It's bad. You don't fail. And the same thing carries into corporate life. You're not allowed to fail. Don't fuck around
exactly,
because you're going to fail. And if you fail, you're a
exactly.
bad boy or a bad girl. But in the entrepreneurial world, failure is sort of like what you want, right? Like it's a recipe, part of the recipe for the cake or whatever, but it needs to happen in order for you to get to the next level. Like, it doesn't have to be epic failure, like you lose it all in bankruptcy, but that didn't work. Okay, what did I learn and move on? But unless you take the shot, you don't know. And that's encouraged in non traditional education and in entrepreneurship. So I'm a late adopter to all of this, but
You and me both. I mean,
yeah,
I definitely failed at several ventures before I found some things that worked on the entrepreneur side, right? But I mean, it's your whole definition of it changes,
yeah,
right? I mean, so your definition changes, which means your reaction changes, right? I mean, it's not scary anymore, right? I mean, I mentioned COVID, right? Like if the biggest hospitality recession in the history of mankind didn't break it, maybe I got something here,
yeah, yeah.
if you can survive, that kind of environment for many months on end, then you probably got something. Run with it, lean into it.
100%. Let's clean up one point, and then we'll go into the sort of member questions. But dad, is there a relationship with dad? Where is dad? What happened to dad?
No. Yeah, so my father actually died in prison in 2010.
Wow.
And so he went to prison for child pornography, which matches
Fuck.
the background. And so I've got a lot of shitty experience. And so part of it for me at this age is when you look at I think it's called like Stoplight or something, the movie about kind of the Catholicism, the cases in like the 80s and 90s that
Oh,
really the class action cases with boys that were being molested by some of these Catholic priests. And so, when I'm able at this age to also put it in historic context, you didn't talk about those things, right? Like in the 50s and 60s, when men beat their wives and they were alcoholics, like that wasn't a thing. Like at some point, as the two income home became more prominent, you couldn't do that as much, and which is a good thing. And the attitude towards kids changes as our generation kind of has all this divorce to cope with, right? Which wasn't necessarily socially accepted before that in the generation before us. So I mean, it's you can put things in historical context, but that being said, so we actually found out about his indictment in 2008. I still kind of maintained contact with him. I was the only kid that did at the time. But we actually started working with the FBI on that case just to kind of establish a pattern of behavior. So it was an interesting time. And so honestly, that was like another pivot point in the relationship with this gentleman. His name is Mark, that I mentioned. That's like my dad now. Call him dad, take him to brunch on Father's Day for the last dozen years or so, all those things. He comes over around holidays and stuff, right? But I was working directly for him at the time. And so there were a handful of instances actually where an FBI field agent would call me, and I would just straight up walk out and like go sit in my car and talk to him for like 2 or 3 hours. And then I come back in, and my work quality, the product spoke for itself. So I was able to get away with some of that, and also he knew just enough to know he didn't want to know. And so at one point after one of those calls, I came in and I was like, "Hey man, I know you know some stuff about what's going on. Like, do you want to know all of it?" And he was like, "Look, I'm not trying to pry. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. Otherwise, you do whatever you got to do. Clearly you got something important going on." And so we really didn't talk about it at length until after it was all over. But it was, interestingly enough, the actual judge that did the sentencing, so he did get convicted, and they had tracked him for like 19 months. But that's what they do with these online cases, to make sure that they're bulletproof. So interestingly, the judge was like, "Hey, I understand this other work that's been going on. Um, Effectively, I don't care." He was in such poor health in a wheelchair at his sentencing. He said, "Look, whatever sentence I give you is going to be a death sentence anyway." And so they actually only gave him 3 years. He did last, in true only the good die young fashion. He did last a couple years into that sentence, long enough that I think kind of the women in my family started. You could see it. It was palpable in just some of the actions. Like, man, this guy's actually going to make it out. He did not. So the way that I found out, my father died. So there's a website, bop.gov. It's the Federal Bureau of Prisons website. And so you can go and check when an inmate, when they were incarcerated and what their expected release date is. And the way that I found out my father passed was going to that website one night. And instead of having a release date, it said deceased. And so I called the prison that he was at, and said, "Hey, I just saw this online. I just want to kind of check, see what's going on." And they said, "Well, you're not listed as the next of kin, so we can't tell you anything. Only thing that we can tell you is that he's not in the facility anymore." So wound up calling his mother, who was still alive at the time, and kind of confirmed that he had passed. But yeah, so not in the picture at all. And I'll be honest with you, also a huge blessing. I know a lot of people that had less fortunate things to deal with as kids. Their parents are still alive and kicking, and they still have relationships because it's the whole like, well, it's my dad or it's my mom, kind of like this moral obligation or whatever. I don't have that. Not afflicted with that with him, and so you know that that moment when his funeral happened is really like another inflection point for my family. And it's like, okay, now this is in the past. We don't have to worry about this abuse happening from this guy again. We can start to kind of process the trauma, and figure out how to deal with it and be functioning adults. So,
Wow. Do you
fortunately,
know
no, not in my life.
natural causes? Do you know how he died?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, man, there's so many. So he had type 2 diabetes. He actually had gangrene on one toe, and actually got a leg amputated below the knee. He had congestive heart failure. There's two types. He had partial liver failure, partial kidney failure, pulmonary edema in both his lungs. Like, if you had a laundry list of a lot of bad things that can happen to you as a senior citizen, because he was 60 when he died, it was all of those things. So,
Wow.
it's just really a combination of living a shitty life as long
Yeah.
as he did.
Crazy, man. Crazy. Well, thanks for sharing. I mean, that way,
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
quite how to segue, but we're gonna do our best to. So let's let's dive into some of these GoBundance member
Yeah,
questions. So the first one is around the pillars. First two around the pillars. So just for the audience and for you, in case you're not sure, the pillars are there's six of them in GoBundance. We have genuine contribution, authentic relationships, extreme accountability, horizontal income, age-defying health, and did I say bucket list adventure? I think those are the six. I think I
that
nailed the
was one.
six. Might have missed
Yep.
them. So let's start with this. Which one of those pillars are you crushing it in?
Man, I think I've gotten a lot better at extreme accountability in the 2.5 years I've been in GoBundance. I think the whole reason I was able to quit my corporate career is because I'm doing well in horizontal income. But I think that a lot of that is the extreme accountability, and right. And so even I was still in corporate America the first year that I was in GoBundance,
Same.
and I said, hey, I really want to quit by the end of this year. And literally, my pod, I was in a different pod at the time, but my first pod, every single week, it was like, okay, is this serious? Like, you really going to do this? And it legit made me pick a day, like my retirement date from that career. And man, I mean, my second pod is like, it's a 10x. They say 10x is easier than 2x, right? My second pod is like 10x. Yeah, exactly. My second pod is just like, it's on crack compared to that. I mean, we are so in lockstep. I'm so grateful for those guys. And every week, I mean, um, it's just I couldn't have asked for anything better. So I really think that the group of us are really kind of crushing the extreme accountability at this point.
Love it. In which pillar could you use more support and accountability or accountability?
I think definitely the genuine contribution. And so, we kind of talked about this a little bit before we started filming, but I think what I have realized that, I terrible at just like writing a check or interestingly enough, I had already partnered with one GoBundance guy on the investing side of the first short-term rentals and now the boutique hotels. And he went to go cook dinner one night at like the Ronald McDonald House. And that was how he started talking to our now third partner in the investing partnership. So it's not like, something great can't come of donating your time. I'm certainly not saying that at all. I think I'm just like too much of a dreamer and a big thinker. And so what I've started doing is just kind of, I formed a mini mastermind, if you will. Really people that kind of don't qualify for GoBundance just yet. I know we've got the feeder programs, but this is even more hyper specific than just don't meet the net worth in terms of, hey, you want to buy a boutique B&B or you want to start a short-term rental property management company. These are things that like I fucked up a lot early, and I feel like I call it making myself the accelerant, right? I don't want to try and light somebody's fire. I'm too old for that, right? Like time's too important to me. But if that candle is lit, man, I want to fucking be the can full of gasoline that just gets
Good way
that
of
thing
putting it.
raging.
I like that. Yeah.
And so there's only a half a dozen of us. In fact, two of the guys, they were going to go start their own property management company, and we're actually finishing up ironing out an agreement to just have them join mine with an equity earn in and help take us from 5 million to 25 million. So it's been amazing. And frankly, I was telling my wife this yesterday. I am shocked at how much I've gotten from these folks, right? Gotten back from these folks. And when I started reaching out, I had a couple people reach out to me on LinkedIn. And when I started reaching out to two of the guys and just like, I know this sounds weird, right? Like, oh, you want to go start a competing short-term rental property management company. And I'm just like, no, let me give you this shit. Like whatever you like, a management agreement, our technology stack. Like, and I know it sounds weird, but I mean it. Like I've failed at a lot of this stuff. You don't have to use all of it. You don't have to use any of it. It's worth what you paid for it, right? But I think I can help here. And here's kind of what I've been building over the years. I'm in the top three short-term rental property management companies in Charleston now. Still super small in the Smokies, but I guess confident enough in where we are and my reputation and ability that I'm just like, there's a lot of people trying to enter this space, this asset class. It's sexy now. It wasn't sexy when I got into it. My old college buddies would laugh at me a dozen years ago. And so it's different. I'm in a different place now. And that was kind of the whole thing behind the mastermind is I have something incredibly specific that I know I can give you for free for no other reason than to help you create generational wealth and change your family's future. And that has really come back to me. It's been amazing. Just some of the things that have come back from these half a dozen folks. And it took, you never know how things are going to go, right? Over the long term. It only took until the second week when one of the folks was like, man, I got to be honest with you. This is the best part of my week. Like, I look forward to this all week. My wife and I talk about it all week. Like I thank you so, like, and it's just it's amazing. Like, and so that to me is the whole point, I guess. And I think I could certainly use more around that. A couple of my guys in my pod are just a brilliant e-commerce guy, and then I've got a brilliant in Dan Marks. He's a senior VP of digital marketing at Crocs, and then he's also got Hedgehog, that they actually buy e-commerce brands and make them profitable again and scale them as his side hustle. They're doing like 30 million a year with his side hustle. And then and Paul Xavier, he's up
Oh
in
yeah.
Boston, and Paul Xavier in Asheville. And so we're all getting together in Asheville, and those guys have experience in putting this kind of stuff together. And to me, that's kind of the next phase of this, if you will, kind of formalizing the execution. But I think I'm starting to get there. It's the one thing I think this year that I've really tried to be a lot more accountable for, though, is genuine contribution.
Love it, man. Wow, that's awesome. And actually, you might have answered another question down the line, but let me start with this one. Where in your life are you potentially flirting with disaster?
Oof, I've gotten a lot better at this, and the name of the book is escaping me now. But I read something that basically was like, "What type of entrepreneur are you?" And look at your last 10 big decisions, and then I want you to go back and look at the outcome to see what that was, right? And so I think I'm a bit of a gambler, and so I went back and I documented the last 10 decisions. And I'm like, okay, thumbs up, thumbs down, basically, or like undecided, too early to see the outcome. So I think like out of 6 of the 10, I was like, could have done something better here, right? And so I don't think I'm flirting with disaster with anything now. I think that really gave me pause, and I'm a lot more deliberate in. I think with entrepreneurs we get bored a bit, so we either squirrel and we look at other business opportunities, or it's like, oh, I should incorporate this. This is amazing, right? And then you break something because you're only good at chaos, right? I mean, my background is shit. I'm amazing at dealing with chaos. So I've gotten a lot better though at like, this is a big decision, slow roll it. And I have my most senior person on my team. I've got about 8 employees now. My most senior person, I'll go to her because I know she's going to shit on it every time. And then it just like makes me, and then I start asking her questions, and there's a back and forth, right? But it makes it a lot more deliberate, and I take more time to make those decisions now than I did previously.
Man, that resonates. I have a guy on my team that is exactly the same. I just texted him yesterday with like, "Hey, I'm thinking this." He's like, "We need to stick with what we're doing for 3 months." I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right, you're right." But I am like all over the place, ready to go. So,
Why are
uh,
you doing that? You're going to break it. Stop.
dude, I have no idea how I lasted 21 years in corporate America. Like you said, with
No,
process
me
for
too,
process
man.
sake, I have no idea. I don't know. Like you know what? I would change jobs often. I would change like, oh, take on a new department, go take this
Yeah.
role, go do that. I would just flip around and do something. It was shiny object, but
Yeah.
it got me 20 years and I did well. I had impact, but fuck. I mean, I see myself and I can't help it. I can't stop it. So I'm waiting for him to quit. Like, the hell with this. I'm out. We keep fucking changing shit, but it is what it is. The question I was going to ask, and I will ask, is in what specific way has Gobundance impacted your life? So I'll let you. You've given us a couple of examples, but maybe there's a story that resonates when I ask that question. I'll let you take it.
Yeah. I mean, like phenomenally. It's just, one of the single biggest things I've ever done in my life. Now, uh, I like to tell people that I was intellectually stagnant probably for like 5 or 6 years before that in my last two corporate jobs, one of which was like mind numbingly painful. I'd rather watch paint dry at this phase of life than what I was doing back then. Um, and so, the ability to exit what I hated doing, I'm so excited for every single day now because I'm building my own dreams. I'm building my empire. And I think that that is largely because of GoBundance, not just because of the tribe and the accountability and the brilliance that we have in the entrepreneurs, particularly with a real estate background, which is a large portion of my net worth at this point. But just all of that, those combination of things has been a massive accelerant across my life. I also was at a perfect inflection point that I knew I needed it. Right. And so when I joined, I mean, like the at the time, 10 grand a year was still a big deal to me. And so, it's like, well, let's give this a shot, for the year. And I leaned into it, man. When I got in, I joined every freaking micro tribe. And I did them all for like 6 months. Right. And what I thought I wanted to do when I was still in corporate America and trying to figure out the next steps, after 6 months, I already had a lot more clarity of like, no, it's not this. Let's get here. Right. And I've never had so much clarity for what happiness and perfection looks like for me. Not perfection, because that's not
I
possible,
know what
but
you mean.
what,
Yeah.
what, what a good life, what a good life means. As I'm starting my life with my wife, I've never had more clarity around all of that than I do at this point in my life. And that really, I mean, I love my pod, man. Like I love those. We meet Monday at 9 a.m. and Friday at 9 a.m. every week. We do Zoom calls twice a week for an hour. And it's so deep. I mean, those guys are so amazing. I love those guys.
Yeah, no, same. My pod and I have been together for a while, and I told this recently to a few people. It's like everybody's asking, like, "Oh, what's the right structure?" Da, da, da. Like, I'll be honest, man, we've been together 4.5 years, and only now are we even thinking about structure. But we can
Yeah.
relate. You know what I mean? Like, we just sometimes just have chats. We just talk, and stuff comes
Yeah.
up, and it's just being able to download all of that and like empty it
Yes.
and have a discussion or pour into another guy. And we do one sheets. I mean, we keep up with what we're trying to accomplish. But when we recently did a text we text every morning just with gratitude. We've been doing that for years. And we did a text thing like, hey, what do you attribute the pod, like where you are today, to the pod? And I mean, it was incredible to see the responses. And it's like, okay, that's with no structure. That's just getting on a call with
Yep.
other like-minded guys that want to get vulnerable and just sort of be their whole selves. It is
Yep.
freeing if only you do
Yeah.
that. So I love that point, man. That's incredible.
I've known Holt for years. So
Yeah.
the way that I met John Holt was, I'm leaning into short term rentals hard, right? In my life, I've decided that this is the way I'm going to go. And I was working with these two realtors here, and they kept sending me shit where I'm like, guys, this isn't zoned properly. It has to be one of these. And I was explaining it every single time, right? And so one day they set up like 10 showings, and Holt had like seven of the listings. And I'm like, I don't know who the hell this guy is, but clearly he knows what he's doing. And so that was many, many years ago. But I know exactly when you guys started doing that, because he mentioned it to me. And that was one of the many things over the years about Gobundance that he mentioned. I'm just like, man, that makes so much sense. I love that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the more you talk to guys that are doing other things, like there's so many little tweaks, right, just to make it that much better. So I
Yep,
just love it.
100%. 100%. I think guys have to take a little pressure off themselves sometimes with what they think they're supposed to do in a pod, but that's just me. What advice might you give to a new or prospective GoBundance member that may be listening right now?
I would say we all go really deep, really quick. So get comfortable being uncomfortable as quickly as possible, and be vulnerable and talk to as many guys as you can. I'll tell you, I was in for almost 2 years, and I did a post of just kind of like, hey, update from, I quit corporate America. I was here, and now I'm here, and I'm happy to chat. And I had my Calendly link in there. And I probably talked to 40 Go Bros in the next 2 weeks.
I'm going to say
There are
that'll
days
fill
that
up.
I woke up, I'm like, shit, I got 9 Go Bros today. But doing that, like, that has led to a lot of additional conversations, right? And so if I were to do it again, I would have blocked off my calendar, so I could say like Thursday is going to be a GoBro day for the next 4 weeks or something,
Right.
and been a lot more deliberate with it. I did not expect the response that I got, but I think you learn so much in putting yourself out there and kind of having those conversations with guys, and we're all so willing to help people for no other reason than we want to see people succeed. So you got to be vulnerable. You got to put yourself out there, talk to as many people as possible. The more people you talk to, the more you're going to be able to refine what your version of success looks like.
That's such great advice, man. People I talk to about joining, they'll hear 10 or 12, 5 or 20 grand, whatever it is. And sometimes they kind of pucker. And I get it, it's a lot of money. But it's like, well, what do I get? And it's like, look, I can't list out features that will make sense to you from like, okay, pod is worth what of the 12.5? Microtribes are worth what, 1,000, 2,000, 5? I don't know. All I can tell you is the objective for you as a member, for you, anybody that joins, is build your web. not only with the guys inside the tribe, but understand that you're joining a group of men or women if you're on the women's side, or even in a merge that are connected at levels that your regular network just isn't. Right. So I make this point all the time. Like in corporate America, my connections could get me 300 level seats at Tiger Stadium or Fenway Park, depending on where I was living, right? Like, oh, great, I can get these and a hot dog for $10. Wow, I got a deal. My connections now put me in the owner's box, literally with a senator and one of my favorite, actually, this author right here, Ben Hardy, right in the owner's suite of a game. Like that's the difference in resource level that you have. So
Yes.
you said it, building your web, connecting, and then those guys. I mean, even those guys that are at that level where they own teams or they played professional sport, the level of vulnerable. I've had conversations with these guys 5 hours at breakfast where we just went into the depths of it. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
your net worth is or whatever. Yeah, building your web is the objective. Like, come in and do that. Don't worry about the features. Like, there's always going to be stuff that you can do. But like you said, 6 months in, you're doing everything. I don't know about you, but I burned out on Gobundance stuff after
Yeah.
a while. It's
Oh, for
too
sure.
much. There's so
For
much
sure.
shit, right? So
Yep.
just build your web, connect with guys. That's the value of it. So I love that. All
And
right.
yeah,
Oh, good.
you hit on something too. So let me take 20 seconds.
Take
So
it.
you mentioned basically kind of thinking big, right? You kind of you glanced on that. I will say that I didn't realize how limiting I was being for myself.
Yeah.
We are our own worst critic, right? Until I would say the last 6 months, even right, even after 18 months in GoBundance, and I finally hit a point where it's just like, why am I stop? Why are you only thinking here? You got all these guys around you that can help you get here,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's so interesting to see how that feeds on itself, right? And with all the people around you, right? And people gravitate towards that too. So think bigger, be vulnerable, put yourself out there.
Amazing. Let's wrap this on a question from the GoBundance card game. The Five of Hearts asks, what is the biggest loss you have ever had on an investment?
On an
If you ever had.
investment. Uh, well, I would say that I was super fortunate. I started investing in equities when I was 18, when I came out of high school. Was fortunate enough to get a few $1,000s, which was like the world to me at the
Yeah.
time. And I opened an account with Charles Schwab back in 1999 when I was 18 years old. 1999 was almost the peak of the dot-com bubble, and so I had $3,000 to $5,000 going into like '01. I probably had like $300 coming out of that. And so it cost me like almost every penny I had at the time. That was back when trades were like $29.99 each way to buy and sell. Now they're free. So kind of a different time, but man, that losing that money it was between 18 and 20, and losing it that early really framed a lot of things for me, being able to kind of go through that dot-com bubble and mini recession. And it changed how I look at, irrational exuberance, if you will, right? Like '08, and then kind of riding this zero interest rate policy bubble, kind of seeing things flatten out now. And, it gave me pause after that, and really looking at like earnings, right? Not just expectations, and analyzing cash flow and things like that. So it's not a bunch of money to me now, obviously, but at the time it was like everything I had, man. I mean, I've had stocks that went down like 99% before they finally went bankrupt 3 years later. So that's probably my biggest percentage loss. Super fortunate in real estate. I haven't ever lost money in real estate. I think, in fact, real estate, I think, is the asset class where if you never put yourself in a position where you have to sell at a certain time, and you have the ability to truly think long term, and I mean 15, 20, 30 years, it is impossible to lose money if you have the ability to think long term, and not be so in debt that you're forced to sell at a time that isn't opportune. So I've been super fortunate to not have lost money there. I certainly have lost money on some business ventures too, but I can try things now and fail very cheaply, in comparison to like my very first business, right? Like you learn what you need and don't need, and how to try out, a business model long before you spend thousands of dollars on something. So, yeah, that's probably it, man. Not a
I
lot.
love it.
quantity wise, but it was a big piece of my net worth at the time.
Amazing. No, that's a great story. I love that. Josh, where can people learn more about you? Where can they reach out or whatever you want to share?
Yeah, I would love if people would hit me up on joshhatter.com. I'm certainly, in the Facebook groups, try to post whenever I can. And, if I see a question from somebody, try to refer, to somebody that I know can help within the tribe. But yeah, I love to chat. I mean, it's, if you want to know anything about short-term rentals or boutique hotels, really been leaning into that space, that asset class over the last 18 months or so. So would love to chat if you have any interest in that stuff at all.
Amazing. Appreciate you, brother. Are you going to be in Lake Oconee?
I'm trying to be, man. That's it's on my list, but yeah, I'm trying to go and see if my wife will come with me as well. So
Yeah.
with her being a physician, she's got a pretty strict schedule. So
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
actually doesn't have her schedule beyond July yet when their new fiscal year starts.
No,
So
I get it. I get it.
on a
Well,
TV
I'll see you at some future event. Maybe it's Lake
for
Oconee, maybe
sure.
it's, I'm in for both. So we will see, but appreciate you, man. Thank you.